Hey guys, this is Fury Golem for House Party 5v5, Syndicate versus Space Age Wizards. This is going to be so much fun. Now, Syndicate has already dropped one game today, so while they were at the top of the pack, their position is very much in danger. In fact, if Space Age Wizards, though it is unlikely, manages to beat both Syndicate and Industrious Gaming, the current number 1 and number 2 teams on the standings, they would actually push themselves up to be tied for first place. As is Industrious Gaming, if they win in the next game against Space Age Wizards, they could put themselves into first place. So either way, this is going to be some position shuffling for House Party 5v5 Premier League, and it's going to be so much fun to watch. Every time I watch Space Age Wizards, it's just such a joy. These guys, admittedly, they have their bad days. They tilt, they go up, they go down, but on their good days, they are one of the best teams in the league and have been for a long time. But their bad days, they tilt themselves off the face of the earth and they drop games that they really should not be dropping. So, if this is one of their on days, this is going to go great for them and push them up into that spotlight. They are going to ban away the Braum and the Zed. Syndicate dropping Ashe and Echo off the table. No particular surprises here. Braum, the popular choice as far as defensive supports go. Now that Alistar has unfortunately been nerfed back into a more playable state rather than an OP state. Zed, we all know Zed on this patch. This guy is a dominating monster. Ditto with Echo. Even post-nerfs, this guy's still super strong. Ashe, though. Ashe, it's been really fun to watch her come back into the meta. So, I mean, especially considering it's just been so Lucian Callista for so bloody long, with occasional dabs of Caitlyn and Ez. Now, with the changes that have been made to the top tier AD carries, and with the shift away from the more CC-focused top lanes and mid lanes, the extra CC she brings, and there's the first pick Fizz. If it's not going to be banned away, it is going to show up in the game. Absolutely. He's been dominating in solo lane, solo queue, as well as performing quite well in team fights. His ability to build tanky is just bar none. The guy comes out so very, very strong, both in lane and in the team fights. Now, the Vladimir is an odd choice to go up against the Fizz. Vladimir can outplay a Fizz in lane and put a lot of pressure down that the Fizz has a hard time sustaining through, but a tank Fizz has the ability to enable ganks against a Vladimir very, very well. So if it's got to be just a Skarner hover. A little bit of leftovers. We were expecting Flowers to be on the cast today, but unfortunately, he wore his voice out with too many casts in too few days, and those explosive finishes right there at the end of the day just knocked him out. Not going to be here. A little bit of a honor hover there over the purple bug. Zyra on the other side. This champion is going to be picked up by Space Age Wizards, and Zyra has been so strong lately. I don't know how much solo queue you guys have been playing, but when I play, I either ban her or I suffer the wrath, because as even just a support, she is able to bring out a huge amount of damage and zone control. If you fight inside of her plants, you can just expect to lose against her, because they're just so brutal. And especially, Zyra is a champion you don't see very often, so a lot of people aren't used to her. Now with her suddenly coming into the meta, people have had to adapt to her playstyle, and I think she will fall off once people get more used to how she plays out, but for now, still very strong. The counter picks are not necessarily there. So, overall, between these two teams, this is a very mobile comp that has so far been drafted by Syndicate. They've got a Rek'Sai, a Fizz, and an Azir. Those three champions together all have dashes and the ability to shove the enemy around. Knock-ups and knockbacks, which you cannot prevent with Merc Treads. That's what the value of a knock-up is that there's no way to reduce that duration. It's just going to hit you, and you just have to suffer through it. The response so far from Space Age Wizards has mostly been zone control. They want to be able to sit back and destroy their opponents as they come in, but they don't have any engage so far unless you count Zyra, which is not very good on the engage. Counter engage, absolutely. Engage itself, no. But the Kindred, the Vlad, both champions very able to stall out their deaths, tank a little bit longer, bring in that Caitlyn for Muse, and make sure that he's able to put out the damage from the backline on that champion. The popularity of Runan's Hurricane, we've seen it for a very long time now. It means AD carries like Caitlyn that used to have a hard time being... They did good damage, but they did single target damage. Now the ability to output that AoE damage means it's so much easier to focus a comp around an AD carry. It really is... I know people call it a tank meta, but it's really an AD carry meta. That's role right now is so very important. If you cannot win in the bot lane, you're probably not going to win at all. It's why it's so important to run so many teleports, that ability to get everyone to the right spot. And oh, I hope we see an Irelia. She's been coming up a little more in popularity lately with the Trinity Forces changes that have made her stronger. We all know Irelia. There's always the nerf Irelia memes, and she is a champion that is very hit or miss. If she comes out strong, she can completely take over a game, but when she falls behind, she's almost completely useless. So apparently Super Frank thinks he's got the power there. He's going to use it against the Fizz. Makes sense to me. I did not understand that Vlad pick at all. Bringing a Irelia in and making the Vlad a mid laner makes way more sense. And between these two comps, I like them both, honestly. Bard is such a fantastic support to counter up against the Zyra in terms of ability to kite backwards or stall out with his ultimate. A good Bard ultimate can really negate a lot of Zyra's influence. And the Ezreal is a little bit more iffy. He is a champion that is capable of putting out a fair amount of damage and farming very safely against the extended range of a Caitlyn. But when he deals with it all on his own, his trades just aren't necessarily up to snuff against the sheer damage output that Relara and Muse have together. Promise is going to have to work very, very hard to be careful, stay safe. Alexander Theo is a fantastic support, but he's going to have to work his ass off to save this Ezreal and make sure that Promise does not fall behind through the laning phase, because this is really where I think Saw has to make their power work, is in the bot lane. That's where they have the best matchup. Muse and Relara are a very, very good team. Alexander Theo is a great support, and Promise is a good AD carry, but I think on a good day, Muse is the superior AD carry, and so that double teleport setup for both teams is going to mean a lot of focus down bottom, and it's going to have to be Saw that comes out a little bit faster on those teleport plays, gets their positioning down a little bit better. Between the two of them, it's going to be so much fun. I do think that Syndicate is still the favored matchup coming into this. They were number one coming into today. They did drop a game earlier, but they are a very, very good team. They got a little tilted last time, played a little bit too much into their opponent's hands, as Spooky Midnight played a really fantastic game earlier on to take out Syndicate for a win for themselves. Spooky Midnight. Those two games were fantastic, watching them take their opponents apart in style. Space Age Wizard is going to have to be able to do the same thing. They have to keep on top of it, make sure their rotations are on point, and that they always get those numbers advantages that you need to be able to take kills and then take objectives afterwards. And Kindred is the excellent jungler to do that with. Puts out so much damage, but also has a relative amount of safety. The extra turret pushing power is no slouch either, and when you're up against a double tank setup like the Rek'Sai and almost certainly the Fizz, that extra shred that comes through against those high health targets is just perfect to run in the jungle. Honestly, I love this setup. I love these two teams. Both of these guys have drafted really good compositions, I think. Little Engage light over on Saw's side. I think they need more playmaking potential. If Irelia doesn't get ahead, they're going to have a very hard time picking opponents to single out and kill until very, very late game if they manage to get that far and Muse takes off into the hyper carry role. But yeah, Super Frank has got to at least break even in lane and preferably manage to cut that Fizz out so that he can't go into the backline and make sure that Muse and Mythology aren't able to output their damage. So we are about to head into the loading screen, and I will see you guys in a bit on the other side once we are all into the match. Oh, this is going to be great. All right, we are on to the Rift. Syndicate versus Space Age Wizards. I am Fury Golem, and thankfully we are going to have Corrupt Hope joining us for play-by-play to save my voice so I don't have to do this all on my own. It is going to be a 5-point start for everyone as we start into this. Pretty safe. No one's going to get any vision. Probably no attempts at a lane swap going to happen here. Space Age Wizards wants to get that Irelia up against the Fizz, and I think Matus is feeling fairly confident in himself. He does have that current meta power pick that Fizz is. So much confidence that brings to him and his play to make him feel like he can take this top lane. And honestly, it's going to be hard for Super Frank. I want to believe in the Irelia. I do. I love those slightly off meta picks that just are so strong and can come up and dominate games. But against Fizz, it's the teleport ignite is going to bring so much pressure to that lane.
Yeah, you're quite right. That's going to be a huge advantage on the side of Fizz. So Aurelia will have to pick her fights quite carefully before she gets that level 7, level 9 power spike that she's famous for.
Pretty standard item pickups across the board. Get those corrupting potions in the top lane for as much trading as possible. Both of those laners fairly interested in the trades, want to get those lanes as exciting as possible for themselves, as the mid laners a little more standard, or I should say just as standard pickups with their items and so forth across the board and down. Top lane starts for both of the junglers, going to give those camps over to their bottom laners and allow them to pick up that early level 2, but both of them have got it, so no particular advantage to either side.
Yeah, bot lane, a lot of abilities flying out. Actually, both these lanes are fairly aggressive. Caitlyn Zyra versus an Ezreal Bard. Quite
the damage.
It looks like my client's lagging, so you can take over PvP for now, currently.
The advantage definitely goes over in raw damage to Saw's side with the Caitlyn and the Zyra, mostly because of that Zyra. Her ability to output in a straight-up fight is huge, but the poke is just pretty much even across the board. Ezreal and Bard, Alexander Theo and Promise, these guys, they have the range. Oh, a little bit of tag on a Promise, but not quite going to be able to land that Piltover Peacemaker from Muse, so he gets out without too much damage down. Both junglers heading down towards the bottom. If they were going to make a move, honestly, I would expect the Rek'Sai to move towards the mid lane for her gank, while Mythology would move down towards the bottom, though her opponents are very pushed in down there. Promise doing okay on his farm, though. Ezreal, that super safe farm I was talking about earlier, able to pick up as much CS as possible from range, and there is a real wave building here going into the turret. It's going to be very much on him to see how much of this CS he can take under tower, but Ezreal's very, very good at that, able to do the auto attack resets and everything to get those CS numbers up, grab those minions, and maybe even get a slight advantage over the Caitlyn, but no, not quite. He hasn't been able to pick up as many. Good zoning there from both Relara and Muse to make sure that Promise doesn't get even trade there in terms of numbers. Irelia and Fizz. These guys have not been going as aggressive as I would have expected. Irelia managing to deny decent farm away from Matus, but on balance, not a whole lot of advantage to Super Frank over his opponent. Here comes the Rek'Sai, though. Maybe just going for that Gromp, but also potentially heading for that top lane. The ward there should spot him out if he goes for the gank, but more importantly, he can grab this Scuttler here, make sure that that stack does not go over to Kindred, clearing it out very quick. Mid lane, Gunshin pushed in a bit, but still able to get his CS fairly decently. Going to be a little bit behind, but not so much that you'd write home about it. These guys playing very, very much more cautiously than I would have expected. Matus, it is really the power of the tank Fizz is more involved in team fights. So if he just makes it through the laning phase intact, that'll be a win for him. Gunshin getting some nice trades onto Little Frosty, but the damage is turned back. Little Frosty running a bit low on mana, but he comes out a little bit ahead in the damage trade. Mythology's going to come around here, see if maybe she can get a gank in onto the Azir, but That is a hard champion to catch, especially when he's not very far up at all. They're going to settle for just pushing this in against Little Frosty, make him fear the power of the Kindred. Risky, risky. Defender heading up into Mythology's jungle. Mythology spots him before the recall, though. Going to get some decent damage down, but the damage returned is huge. Mythology drops very low, but here comes Gunshin. Going to see if he can help out. Defender portals away, manages to get out just fine. Plenty of health left on him, but it is going to slow down his jungling a fair bit. Mythology, Ditto, has to back. And still, this bot lane is so pushed in. Muse and Relara managing to make use of that lane power fairly well. Going to get a CS advantage for themselves of almost 10 CS at this point. The biggest gap we've seen in the game so far. And oh, Matus gets 6 and in he goes on Super Frank, who's still only 5. The Pogo, the Ignite, the Burn, and the first blood. Matus easily able to take that. Not even in danger of his life at all. Super Frank not respecting the superior level 6 that the Fizz had and going to drop for his troubles. That is not a good sign for Space Age Wizards at all. They definitely picked that Irelia into the Fizz, saying that they could make that work, that they could take the advantage there, and so far that has not been the case at all. Quite the reverse. Even in CS still, and teleports back to lane, so not going to fall too far behind in terms of experience and money here, picking up all of these with the blade rushes from target to target. But Matus will have plenty of time to recall and get back to lane. Probably will not have to blow his teleport, which means it'll still be available if Syndicate decides they want to make a move in the bottom lane. It is worth mentioning, however, that despite Matus picking up the first Blood Gold, there was no assist money for that, and that means that the CS advantages in favor of Space Age Wizards leave the gold at roughly even at this point in the game. Maybe a 25 gold-ish lead for Syndicate, but that's not really even worth mentioning, so shame on me for doing so. This is an Earth Dragon first, so the ability doesn't matter as much which team takes it first. They are handy, enabling those the big neutral monsters, Dragon and Baron and Rift Herald, as well as getting you a burn, true damage burn on turrets, but it's not a very big one, and that means that this is probably not going to be as much of a priority as it would otherwise be. With Sated Devour no longer onto the table, it's no longer as important for Kindred to rush Dragon, and so while they do have the capacity, pronouns for that weird champion, while they do have the capacity to take that out early with the percent health damage that they deal, it's not probably going to be something that Saw would rush, because they know that if they lose there, they lose the bot lane pressure that they've had all game, and they need very much to keep that advantage, especially since Ezreal is just heading out of his weak point where he buys tier. He's got his Sheen now, and once he starts heading towards either Iceborne Gauntlet or Trinity Force, either of which being viable, the more peel-oriented Iceborne Gauntlet setup probably being superior against this double short-range mid-lane, top-lane setup that is available for Space Age Wizards. But on balance, I think it'll probably be Iceborne. Trinity Force is a little bit better these days for most champions, but it's not actually better on Ezreal because he can make use of the AP ratios.
Yeah, the Iceborne also supplies a lot of armor to Ezreal, making him a lot stronger in those bot lane trades, which is a huge power spike considering Caitlyn needs at least 3 items, the IE and the double crit with usually the Hurricane and Rapid Fire Cannon.
And now that Kindred goes with the Blood Razor instead of the Sated, those items having been switched a couple patches ago, it means that the Kindred's damage is almost all physical instead of the heavy magic damage output that Sated used to give that champion. So Iceborne Gauntlet even more valuable now than it would have been before. Little Frosty picking up those CS, going to go completely dead even in the mid lane. Despite that one kill in the top lane, mid and top have just been so absolutely even in terms of pressure and kills. Neither side able to go too ham on their opponent. Gunshin looks like he's going to try for something on Frosty, but not, just a little bit of wave clear.
Yeah. Well, that Spectre's Cowl really saves him a lot of health, but yeah, putting out the damage on, he's just healing so much back. Little Frosty definitely losing that trade as he chugs up that health potion. But yeah, not too much happening. Really aggressive laning, but top and mid are fairly similar.
Matus, his ult is back up, so Fizz has that kill pressure again onto the Irelia. However, Mythology's up in the top lane with Kindred, so we might see two junglers both heading towards the top lane here. A little bit aggressive if they try to dive on Super Frank when he's that close to the turret, but
There's a
it might be something they
stun.
could do.
There's some but the junglers meet. Mythology's on the run. Hack's Defender is going in after him. He still has the tunnel. There's the red buff ticking. Here comes the teleport in. It is canceled by Gunshin. But it looks like Rek'Sai is still trying to get for the chase. And nope, it has ended. Alex and Theo backing off in the bot lane. And a very close fight. Kindred actually going back, but Rek'Sai and Fizz are both behind Irelia. So I wonder if they're going to go for the dive.
Super Frank did just blow his ultimate to clear that wave, so if they go on him, his healing will not be available to keep himself healthy under that turret. They could definitely go for this if they wanted to, and Super Frank, he's playing a little bit back. He has a ward there to see if Defender goes in on him. Nope, he is going to back off. Just let them have the turret. Probably the smart choice here, but that is a serious disadvantage for Space Age Wizards.
Oh, the Ignite and Zyra all being dropped down in the bot lane. Promise taking huge amount of damage. The full combo by Caitlyn. All blocked by Bard, so just barely living. But, you know, I have to give props to Super Frank. Not a lot of top laners can realize, like, when they're about to get dived and when they should back off. So ulting the wave to minimize the amount of minions that would crash into the turret was actually a very smart idea.
Cough, Dyrus, cough. Anyway, dragon movement here by Space Age Wizards. Doesn't look like there's going to be any contest at all. They should be able to take this quite easily. That's another advantage that Zyra brings to the table as a support. She's very, very helpful when it comes to taking dragon. Her plants both do a lot of damage and also can tank up dragon hits if that's what you need. Means that they take it down fairly quick for this early in the game. One dragon over to them for the one tower that has been picked up by Syndicate. One kill also for Syndicate, but because of the CS numbers, it's actually not a gold advantage in those terms. It's just the tower so far that has given them their monetary advantage.
Yeah, and honestly, it's quite worth it, because as you get an Earth Dragon, the amount of time it takes to do a Baron just significantly decreases. Looks like Alex and Theo to be running out from Mythology in the river. He will be caught out. Vladimir Gunshin is already going for the flank. He will Magical Journey out and be safe, just taking a little chunk of damage. And looks like we're going to see a Rift Herald coming out on the side of Syndicate.
Yeah, good move by them. Drops Matus pretty low. He's going to have to back, but that's going to give him even more pressure against Super Frank, as if he needed any more. He's actually down a bit of CS. Super Frank has done a very, very good job of last hitting, making sure that while he's had less time in lane, he's used it better than his opponent has. And that means that while the Irelia mess up early on may not have been ideal, it is still a solid pickup for them in the lane so far. They have managed to make it work against Fizz, who has just been considered this incredibly powerful, dominant pick in the meta right now.
And now it looks like they're sending Caitlyn Zyra in the top lane to get that top lane outer turret. They will be able to zone and deny Fizz. Fizz does have that Trinity Force, so that is a nice power spike, so you could actually all-in Caitlyn before Zyra gets close.
Yeah, that's a bit risky, bit bold as a move there. Ooh, here comes the Rek'Sai ultimate.
Taking quite a bit of damage. There's the Zyra Thunderlords, just so oppressive. But here comes Rek'Sai coming in for the gank. Will get eat away by Caitlyn. And now, oh, the flash onto Relara, and there's the Fizzle. Now Little Frosty's behind Muse, and he will go ahead and Shurima shuffle her forward. Muse is completely out of position, but here comes Gunshin. He's going to do some serious damage onto Little Frosty, but Muse will fall. There comes the teleport. Canceled by Irelia, but now Little Frosty is the one in trouble, and he's gonna fall to that Sanguine Pool, completely denied by the E. And now Mattius and Hack's Defender are trying to finish off Gunshin, but Kindred is on the way. She's there. She will be able to get the ultimate in time, but she doesn't. The ultimate. And now she is in trouble. Mattius is getting hit low. I don't know if Mythology can win this, but maybe he's able to kill Tash. Oh, and he flashes, and he still will fall, and that's a double kill for Mattius.
That is overall 4 kills for 1, and Super Frank is having a hard time in this bot lane. Promise is also low, but with Alexandtheo there to keep him safe, Super Frank probably can't manage to finish that Ezreal off. Just going to take this farm up as the Ez backs off and goes back to base. That was a bad series of events for Saw. The miss on the root by Zyra, Relara not being able to execute on that as a Defender and Matus came in on them means that they had one of their most crucial peeling tools completely nullified, and that made that whole fight so much easier for Syndicate. the trickle in one at a time was pretty bad. Syndicate was just ahead of their opponents, executed properly, and Saw has got to pick up their game a bit. They are not reacting as quickly as their opponents, and that's going to be very, very dangerous with the comp that they've drafted, which cannot necessarily fight against superior numbers.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest tragedies was Kindred not alting. The two
That was
enemies
horrible.
weren't low, and it was only Vladimir who was quite low, so there was no reason to even hold your ultimate for the last second. And just Vlad dying. But looks like we have 3 members of Saw. I'm gonna go ahead and grab this top lane turret.
They have managed to get there faster than their opponents. It does mean that they are going to actually take the lead in turrets because Super Frank managed to grab that turret down on the bot side while everything else was going on. So, on balance, the goal is still in favor of Syndicate, but there's a little more map control available for Saw.
Yes, quite true. Looks like my client is glitching out again, so you'll have to take over for PvP Fury.
These guys, this has been a very controlled game by Syndicate. They've had the power, they've had the positioning, and they've had the mechanics to be able to capitalize on their choices as far as champion select goes. They've made all of those picks work for them so far, and as they scale into the game, I think this will continue to be a positive thing for Syndicate. Saw has some late game champions. Yes, Vladimir is a good late game champion, though more of his power is in the mid game now than it used to be. Caitlyn, of course, that late game hyper carry, but even so, the ability to get back onto her is so powerful by this Syndicate comp, and they have the mechanics-oriented champions that allow them to capitalize on their individual skill. Syndicate is a team of very mechanically gifted players, and they've drafted a composition here that utilizes that perfectly. All of their champions are able to dance around their opponents, dodge skill shots, and Alexandre Theo on this Bard, we can expect him to be able to land those ultimates in just the right places to make these fights the number advantage for Syndicate, even if they get outplayed in the rotation. Gunshin's still a big threat to Little Frosty, though. That Azir not able to step into lane against the Vladimir at all. But Mythology versus Matus. Mythology's ult is popped, but Matus isn't even low, and Muse may go down as well. Yes, he does. Matus just hops right back out. That Trinity Force tank Fizz 6-0-1. Matus properly using its power and showing why this champion is probably the most contested pick in the game right now. 3-man push down here. Only Rolara to defend. This tower should go down. They don't have a lot of champions able to put down the damage all that quickly, but there is another wave coming up here. And unless Muse can get to lane very, very quickly, well, they are going to just back off, maybe go for this dragon out here. It is just an air dragon, but even so, they should be able to take it without any competition from their opponents. Little Frosty going to come down here to make it a 4v dragon. Should execute it quite quickly. Going to drop here in a couple of seconds. Ezreal all alone by himself up here, but not threatened. No knowledge by Saw that he was alone there. No moves to be made. Syndicate now up 3.3k. They're 6 kills ahead of their opponents. They've managed to move themselves up into the tower lead and evened up the dragon count. Slightly more valuable dragons on the side of Space Age Wizards, but even so, this has been a very, very good game for Syndicate. They lost their game earlier today against Spooky Midnight. Spooky Midnight looking very controlled and more aware of the game than their opponents in that setup. Syndicate had something to prove coming into this game, and so far they've been able to do it. They have capitalized on all their advantages, and really, they did a good job in champion select. Saw gave them a couple of power picks that maybe they shouldn't have. It looked like Saw deliberately gave those to them and that they thought they had the power answer. The Irelia pickup, the Vladimir bait, but not seeing it come out so much in the game itself. Super Frank 99 here running away from Promise. Maybe he can turn this around, but it'd be very hard. And here comes Alexandre Theo on the backside. Super Frank completely on the wrong side of this. A lot of damage down on a Promise. Can he manage to make it work? No. Promise getting away with about 150 health there. Super Frank way too deep, and all the power from Syndicate on that side. Gunshin and Rolar going to be ulted back in by Little Frosty. Gunshin managed to dodge it with the pool. Little Frosty dropping low. Caitlyn ult manages to get around the Bard and take him out. Alexanthio not able to block it. And now Matus is low. He drops as well. 2-4-2, even counting the early death by Rolara deep in the jungle there. So a good turnaround by Space Age Wizards, and now they may be able to push down on and take this mid lane turret, though the flank from Defender makes this very dangerous. Mythology still has his ult, so if the dive comes in, Gunshin wants to go kill Promise all on his lonesome, but that's risky. Mythology has to pop his ultimate against Defender. Gunshin, God, Defender is so tanky on this Rek'Sai, able to soak up all that damage, and he does force them back. They get about half of the health on that mid-tier 1 turret. Space Age Wizards has to back off, though, and do not get as much out of that fight as they probably should have. Gunshin needs to rein himself in a little bit there. He might have been able to get that kill onto Alexanthio, but that was a risky dive. They should have just tried to take the turret. They needed his power there to make sure that they were safe from Defender's flank, which they should have had vision on based on this ward in the dot bush by the dragon, but unfortunately not so much. Speaking of vision, there's a lot of vision set up in the top side by Space Age Wizards. They have 4 pinks up there. They have all their pinks on the table, by the way. All 5 champions have their pinks down, which is a good thing to do, but it's all on this top side, which isn't necessarily as important. They haven't been flexing their muscles up there at all. The ganks haven't been coming in. They haven't done any roams up there. So maybe a little bit wasted, all that vision there, whereas the vision coming out from Syndicate is much more centralized around the mid, which is where a lot of the focus has been. These guys dancing around that area, down towards Dragon a bit. We haven't seen any full-on 5v5 team fights, or really even any 4v4s. The closest we got there was that last 3v3 there. Space Age would have managed to take the advantage in that scenario, but even so, it is just a little bit behind the steps for them. They are on the back foot for sure against Syndicate. They did that one decent move in the mid lane, but they didn't get anything off of it. No tower, no neutral objectives. They're going to have to capitalize a little bit better next time if they want to come back in this game. They are only 2.4k down, but even that small amount can be used very, very well by a team like Syndicate. Mythology sitting on 4 Kindred stacks. Not terrible for this point in the game, but not great either. Going to help them take down neutral objectives if they can manage to get enough map control to go for those. But right now, Syndicate pushing up both mid and bot lane. Matus going to back off here, not completely confident in his ability to fight Super Frank, and he wants this blue buff. That'll make him so much more dangerous if he can manage to grab it. But no, it is going to go over the Ezreal, who has been caught out. Rolara snagged him down and deleted. Mythology a little bit low, trying to play aggressive. Super Frank in. He gets ulted by the Fizz. Up he goes. They're going to put so much damage down with that ultimate from Irelia, but the backing ability is so good here, and Gunshin's going to take a bunch of damage as he tries to go in on his opponents. The Zhonya's just in time to keep him alive, and now he's pretty healthy off of the return heal from his ultimate, but it does look like it's just going to be the 1 kill gained by Saw. They do have the power in those fights, but they haven't been able to capitalize on it. They haven't been able to get onto their opponents and make that superior team fight work for them, because Syndicate is just so slippery, and the wave clear is sufficient from the Syndicate team that they also are doing a pretty good job of defending these turrets. In comes the ult from Ezreal, trying to help clear this out, but it's not going to be quite enough. Should be a tower going down here in favor of Saw, but Rolara gets deleted. Wow, right under tower there. Takes too much damage. Those plants can draw aggro like that. Now Gunshin, a little bit risky. He may just drop now. Yes, he is going to die. Defender gets back onto Mythology. Mythology drops his ultimate, but Saw has overextended and are paying for it with their lives. Now 3 dead as Syndicate shoves up mid. They might actually be able to take Baron off of this. I don't think Saw can even try to contest this. This is a 5-man Baron attempt by Syndicate, and they definitely have the sustained damage to burn this down incredibly quickly before there's even an attempt by Saw to get in there. Now, looks like they're making the call to go towards Dragon. It is an Infernal Drake. That would really, really help with the damage output from either team, and I don't see any way that Saw can contest theirs. They're champions are going to be up in time, but against a Baroned up, just recalled, just item bot 4K lead Syndicate, that would be a very hard thing to pull off. There are some summoners down for Syndicate, but for the most part, they have their important ones available. Only the Exhaust, the Ignite, and the Flash on Defender down means that this is not even going to be a contested dragon. Syndicate, whew, that was a very serious counter engage by them and a whole lot of power taken for their side when they were already ahead. Saw pretty much confined to their side of the map at this point, and even there, Theo and Defender forcing Mythology back. Gonna pop that Raptor buff that he's managed to obtain for himself. Doesn't manage to clear out any wards with it. And that is going to be a bad thing for them because there are Syndicate wards all through Saw's jungle. And that means a lot of control for this rotate and mobility heavy team that they've drafted. Syndicate is just out-rotating their opponents and bringing their power to bear in a superior way. Muse dodging out on the Bard ult, but Syndicate going to grab up that tier 2 turret for themselves. Matus going after Mythology. Little Frosty here as well. Mythology, decent flash there. Manages to get himself away from the Azir ult. Doesn't get himself killed, but he is very, very low health, and these are a lot of Baroned up minions running into the bot lane here. As well, the mid, Gunshin trying to hold this turret, but he's almost certainly going to drop. No, Super Frank here just in time to save Gunshin. Zonya has to be blown to keep himself alive, but yeah, this tower is going to drop. Syndicate still. The draft honestly put more teamfight power in the hands of Saw, but the rotate, the power understanding, the knowledge of when they can go in and when they can't on Syndicate is just superior to Space Age Wizards this game. They have been able to make the better choices over and over again so far. And it really shows in the 5k gold lead, the 8 kill advantage, the 2 extra turrets they've managed to take, as well as the Baron and Dragon control they've had. Now, their Baron should be dropping off fairly shortly. It is a little over 3/4 gone, so they probably won't be able to take any more towers with that. But even so, it's very solid power play. We unfortunately don't have those LCS gold numbers that you get for Baron power plays, but I think we can be fairly safe in saying that it was between a 4K and a 5K Baron power play with all those turrets dropping, all of those neutral camps taken, and so much CS able to be snapped up by this Syndicate team. In every single lane, they've been sort of rolling a 1-3-1. Actually, it's really been more of a 1-1-1 with 2 people just constantly moving around, which is something that Bard enables his team to do. Gunshin has just been constantly on low health. He's trying to fight the enemy. He knows that he has a lot of power in his Vlad, but the teamwork has been better from Syndicate, and they've been able to make sure that Vlad, despite his superior power, ends up dropping super low like that. Almost going to drop here, but not quite. Bates promising he has to flash back out. That ability down. Caitlyn ult also down. Blocked by Theo, but that puts him low as well. Meanwhile, Matus is putting a lot of pressure down on this bot lane. He gets an ult onto Super Frank. Here comes Little Frosty, but I don't think they're going to be able to finish that Irelia off. She's just a little bit too tanky. That does mean all that pressure has been drawn to the side lanes, and Defender can push up mid by himself now. He might actually be able to take this inhibitor turret all by his lonesome. Super Frank is going to try and stop him. He's going to back out without taking that turret. There is a big collapse coming onto him. Smart choice by him to back off there. All of the pressure by Syndicate is now in the bot lane, and it is only 3 of them. If they get caught out here, this could go very, very badly, and they are going to back off. There aren't any big neutral objectives on the map now. Blue buff going to be stolen away by Syndicate, but Dragon and Baron still have hefty timers on them, which means all this control for Syndicate is going to stall out a bit unless they can manage to crack the base. They've almost done it in the mid lane, but surely Saw knows that and are going to have more attention focused in that area. Wow, Syndicate is just not letting up the pressure at all. Little Frosty and Matus, these two guys down here are so scary and so safe at the same time. They can engage if the enemy does not bring superior numbers, but when the enemy does bring superior numbers, they can just back off without any threat of being caught. Like I said in Champions, like, the engage is not there for this Saw team. They had to get Irelia ahead if they wanted her to be able to pull off the engages that they need at this point, and it just didn't happen. Matus gets stunned up, though, under tower. He takes a bunch of damage, but he pogos out. Defender gets a bunch of damage onto Gunshin. Defender gets knocked up, but they do have an Azir tower here. Fizz ult out, doesn't get much. That's a lot of power out for Syndicate that they don't have now. They still have the Azir ult, though, and they have the Azir turret, which means Saw just can't put the pressure down there, and Promise manages to pick up the inhibitor turret in the mid lane while all of that was going on. Syndicate, even when they don't necessarily get the optimal fights, they've put themselves in a good enough position that they still get advantages. Dragon up in 35 seconds, but Baron will be up in 55 seconds, which means if anyone takes too long to try and take Dragon, Baron could be taken away by the other team. Saw has had the disadvantage so far, but the Caitlyn and the Kindred constant damage output mean that they can still rush down a Baron very, very quickly if Syndicate puts too much power on the bot side of the map and doesn't respect their ability to finish that off. Gunshin dropping very low here. Alexanthio going to get the ult down onto him, but Muse is here with the pressure to prevent that. Rolara, who has to flash out, takes a little too much damage from Little Frosty there. Almost gets himself killed. Gonna have to be a bit more careful. Zyra is a very powerful support that if you get into the late game can actually fight mid laners sometimes, but not when you're fighting a late game Azir. That guy will destroy you in a heartbeat if you step out of line against him. And they are going to go for the Baron. The Dragon snatched up by Syndicate, and they're going to get here back in time. It's 20 seconds, and it's plenty of time for Syndicate to get power. And Syndicate may be able to just push up the mid lane if they want. Defender ults in on the Rek'Sai. A little bit of poke traded back and forth. Saw is finally going to start this Baron. They do have the Caitlyn traps down, but the Bard Magical Journey means they could just go straight through this wall. Nope. There is the Baron grabbed up by Saw, but they are on the back foot in this fight. Defender, though, dropping very, very low. He manages to... No, he drops along with Mythology. Both the junglers down. Now Promise drops. Now Little Frosty drops. Oh, Saw is taking this fight back. Gunshin gets over the top of the Bard ulti, and that means they may be able to catch this guy off, but Gunshin does get stunned up. Alexanthio very fast, and that looks like it's going to be all that Saw can take, but that is a very, very nice comeback. A 2 for 3, and they grab Baron. That is going to give them some very, very nice breathing room. Allow them to calm down, step back, realize that they're not out of this game yet, which, well, perhaps more like I'll realize that they're not out of this game yet. They already knew it. They made a good play, capitalized on their power. Honestly, Syndicate took too long to get in there against the Dragon. It was almost like Syndicate couldn't believe that Saw was actually going to do the Baron, and so they waffled around the outside a bit, and when they did finally go in, it was too late, and that extra power from the Baron helped them finish off the fight. Saw has had the 5v5 advantage this whole game, if they can get them. Syndicate's advantages up until now have been that they've been able to pull back, that they've been able to dance around their opponents and force smaller skirmishes or fights to their numbers advantage. Promise, ult up the mid lane, gonna push that out a bit. But it's gonna be hard for Syndicate to try and take anything right now. But other side of the same coin, I don't think Saw is going to be able to capitalize too well on this Baron. They would have to 5-man push to ensure that it would be a safe push, and that would leave Matus to push on the side. Trinity Force Fizz may not be the best split pusher in the world in terms of actual tower taking ability, but it's decent enough. The Sunfire Cape helps him clear those waves out and can make him get to turret pretty quickly, and there really isn't anyone who can contest him at this point. Super Frank does have 2 items completed, but that's against the 4 items completed by Matus. I mean, the Fizz is just so ridiculously strong. 10, 1, and 3, and he's got a Guardian Angel, which means focusing him is so not an option. Relara getting caught out by the Bard ultimate, instantly deleted. He gets his ultimate out, which allows a little bit of damage output by Saw, but they don't back off fast enough. Mythology manages to get his ult down in time, but Matus is just wrecking them. He's not even going to drop. They managed to get both of their backlines. Super Frank and Gunshin are here, but it's 2v5 now. I don't know what Gunshin thinks he's doing. guess he just figured he couldn't get away anyhow. He might as well put down as much damage as possible, but he's not going to get anything for his trouble. This is going to be an easy inhibitor pickup for the 5 still living members of Syndicate, with Super Frank the only defender for Saw. This may be game. There are still 30 seconds plus on 3 of the champions, 3 of the players for Saw. And that's a lot of danger. There aren't the minions here, but they're going to push it down anyway. They can't quite get this tower. They are going to have to back up. It's not going to be the end of the game, but that's the base cracked. That's the inhibitor down. Syndicate with a bunch more kills to swing the gold a little bit more in their favor. They now are up to a 6k lead. It has been a slow and steady rise for them. Saw doing a fairly good job of answering back in CS what they've been losing in kills, but ultimately Syndicate, they've just had superior engages because they have the champions to engage with. A definite advantage coming out of champion select there. I do apologize for the fact that this has been a solo cast. Unfortunately, Corrupt Hope's client was giving him trouble. He cannot spectate. It lags for 30 plus seconds at a time for him. So we are just going to have to make do with me for probably this game and the next game as well, which is Saw versus Industrial Gaming. Second game of the day for Saw, right in a row on top of each other, and both streamed. If that doesn't put the pressure on, I don't know what will. But so far, they may have had a little bit of trouble in terms of champion select. They didn't have the power that maybe they thought they had when they picked their champions into their opponent. Gunshin gonna try and fight Matus. What is he thinking? He's 1v1ing the Fizz. There's no way this works out well for him. Matus backs off because he figures Gunshin must have teammates coming. That is not the case. Matus could have finished that off. But the kill is in for Promise in the bot lane. The Zyra is going to possibly... No! The Bardo comes in and saves Promise. He is going to get out. Little Frosty dropping low as well, though. Super Frank is here. Defender going to try and stop this. Promise just barely kept alive. Super Frank goes super deep all by his lonesome, and Syndicate have just had the superior team synergy all game. They might not have the team fight power, but it does not matter if they can make sure that they never have to fight a full-on team fight. This is going to be game. Syndicate taking down the last Nexus tower and then the Nexus. All game, the skirmish and fight mentality coming out from these guys, and they pull it off through every stage of the game for a 23-8 finish. Very, very nicely done. Saw was able to answer back a few times, but ultimately their team fighting setup could not handle the split push and rotate coming out from Syndicate, and Syndicate is going to make up for their earlier loss, going 1-for-1 today. That's got to feel a little bit better for them. Danger of dropping down to third place averted, but they are now going to have to share first place if Industrious manages to win their next game. This is Fury Golem for House Party 5v5. We